All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to get going on the last, you're in the long stretch, what is that called now? The, the long stretch? That's not right. I can't get the right phrase there.
Home stretch.
Home stretch, thank you. Where's my words? Thank you. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide, Savannah. I feel like that puppy right there. So I think right now what we'll do, we're going to focus on a variety of different pieces. But the last piece is we want to talk a little bit about self-care. And but first, let's just cover what we're going to talk about in this last 50 minutes that we have together. That big piece about how do we connect with students, most of this area, while it's relevant to a number of students, whether they're in elementary school or secondary, a lot of this is going to be focused on supporting secondary students. And how are we connecting with them and connecting them on to resources and other opportunities in their community, including their FAFSA, and we'll talk a little bit about unaccompanied youth. So I went ahead and put this slide in here because I think sometimes we forget about how expensive, realistically, school can be for students. And while it is free and appropriate public education, there are a lot of expenses that seem to come along with that. And earlier I talked about how we have to remove barriers, and someone in the chat had asked about waiving, waiving fees. If you don't have a budget to cover art fees, extracurricular fees, that doesn't mean you don't have to waive that fee. You still have to make it possible for that student to be able to fully participate, which means that's what you do. You waive the fee if you don't have a budget for it so that that student can participate in that extracurricular activity. We want to make sure that these particular things that are part of our school experience are available to our students experiencing homelessness. Now, this is not the same for foster care. In foster care, you want to ensure that you are working with the caseworker to get those fees and fines covered, as Stacy spoke to earlier. InvestEd is an amazing resource, and hopefully you are using it all up every year. I think, Maren, even though there are budget cuts coming up, we still have to make it possible for those students to fully participate if other students are able to participate in those programs, and get creative. One of the things that I, would do was partner with our Seroptimus group or local nonprofits, and ask them to sponsor some element, some program, maybe what they want to do, instead of having a coat drive, could they have a fund drive to pay for extracurricular fees? Work with your ASB group to do fundraising to support those students. We do have to be creative to make sure we remove those barriers. But this is just a reminder of what a lot of, different fees are there. For senior years, so expensive. Cap and gown, placement test if they're applying for college applications, remind them that some of those they're entitled to apply for without that fee, or to get that fee waived, and that there are some supports to help with that. So let's go ahead. And that last piece, a lot of times I would get this question at the end, students will have outstanding fines or fees and it's time to graduate. We can't make that, we have to make sure that we remove those fines and fees so that they're not a barrier to graduation. I mean, ultimately, we would love it if we could have that covered, but if we can't hold back that student's symbol of their academic achievement by not letting them walk or progress because they have outstanding fees or fines. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen. There was a question, I just saw that. Let's see, yearbooks. Yearbooks are not a not every student gets a yearbook. So a yearbook, just like school pictures, are two things that you're not necessarily required to pay for. But what I did, to be honest with you, what I did was I hit up every single one of my friends on Facebook, and I would tell them it's the end of the year. And our students, particularly my juniors and seniors, I wanted to make sure that they had a yearbook when they left. And the reason that I did it, and thank you for dropping that resource in there, Leslie, is because yearbooks can actually be used to verify identification. So they could take their yearbook to the driver's license office and use that to show them that they are who they say they are when they're trying to get identification. They were also able to use their yearbook when they would go to the DSHS office. So I wanted to make sure that there were things that my students had. Oh, yay. I love it, Sarah. I love seeing that InvestEd now covers yearbooks. Of course, if you've got a little American Rescue Plan funding, and you have not figured out what you're spending it on, here's some ideas, and you'll have to talk with Jill about how that will work, but that's another possibility too, or McKinney-Vento funds or HSSEP funds. Next slide, please. I want to quickly talk about unaccompanied youth. We could have unaccompanied youth whether they're in preschool. And just a reminder that that's defined as a child or youth that's not in the custody of a parent or guardian. And when we talk about parent or guardian, we mean court-appointed guardianship. There was a little conversation that we had at the beginning of lunch about this. But we also have to recognize that in order for that student to qualify as an unaccompanied youth, for our purposes, they have to also be in one of those situations that qualify as homeless under McKinney-Vento, which means, of course, doubled up due to a loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason, couch surfing, unsheltered, any one of those other different categories that would qualify them for McKinney-Vento and not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. Now, just because there is a guardianship or custody issue does not necessarily mean that that student is a McKinney-Vento student. Sometimes that can happen, but that doesn't mean that they're in a their housing situation qualifies them as experiencing homelessness. And the reason that we do this work, I think this is probably the most significant number, so I always make sure that I share it or bring it up in every presentation. This research came out of the Voices of Youth count that Chapin Hall did in 2017. And it is that if a student does not graduate or get their GED, they're at a 346% higher risk of experiencing homelessness as an adult than their peers who do graduate or get their GED. And I want to do having worked in shelters and having ran a day center, I want to do every single thing I can do to make sure that the students I'm working with have every advantage so that they don't have to have that experience. Yes, thank you, Tara. 3.5 times higher, 3.5 times more likely to experience homelessness as an adult if you don't get that GED or that diploma. Next slide, please. And this is just a little bit of course, sobering data. This is from our report card for Washington State for 2022. For our foster care youth, 53.3% graduate in comparison to 82.5% of our students who are not in foster care. As far as graduating on time. For homeless youth, that number is 60.9% statewide that go on to graduate versus 84.7% for students who are not experiencing homelessness. And then, of course, you see that these students are much more likely to have to continue into fifth year, but we do see good results for our fifth year students if we can keep them in school. But we also see there that dropout rate is significant too for students who are in foster care and experiencing homelessness. Stacy, did you want to say something on that?
No, I mean, I think the numbers speak for themselves, sadly. You could see foster care compared to their peers, at least in foster care. I mean, the numbers are just devastating to me that this many kids are out there and they're not graduating on time and they're dropping out. And it's clearly something that we need to really work hard towards addressing.
I also want to amplify something that Melinda put in the chat, and that is you need to be capturing that unaccompanied youth data in your student information system for those students who are experiencing homelessness and are also unaccompanied youth, which most of the time, if you're capturing unaccompanied youth data in your system, it is a student that's experiencing homelessness. So thank you again for dropping that in there, Melinda. Next slide, please. I want to just make one more comment on that last slide. If you want to find out for your own district what your graduation rates are for your any other population, not just McKinney-Vento, but also your gifted or your migrant or your multilingual populations, that's available on our report card website. It is sometimes that information can be a little bit delayed. You also have to know that we have to correct it. It's not always 100% accurate because we have people who graduate after the end of the year because they had to go to summer school. So we just have to be mindful that that number might not be exactly correct. But it is available to your district if you want to check that out and know more about where your district stands with your graduation rates for your special populations. Stacy, over to you.
Yeah, so speaking of that last slide, kind of is a good little segue to this slide because OSPI does partner with Treehouse, and they have a program called Graduation Success, which is that second one down there. And we do recognize that those graduation levels are really, really low, and they have increased over the last few years thanks to Treehouse's Graduation Success program. So they are really targeting these kids. We know that foster youth are really struggling out there, so they've created this program statewide now. They're working with students who, to keep them on track to graduate. And so it's a really great program. It's working. We know there's progress being made. We still have a really long way to go, but we're getting there. And that's thanks to a lot of what Treehouse has been doing, working one-on-one with these youth. They also have an educational advocacy program, and some of you may be familiar with this. When students are in foster care, you can refer them, and you can go to their website and do that. So you can refer them to have an educational advocate through Treehouse, and they're amazing. They're great. They work with all ages, and they help with best interest determinations, scheduling those meetings, making sure the kids are on track. They're constantly checking in on track. Checking in on the kids to make sure they're on track. So it's a really great program. If you want to refer them, you could just go to Treehouse website and then you can make your own referral. It's really easy. You just have to create a quick account, and then you can make it a referral for one of your foster youth if you think they could use, a party to help them succeed in school. And then they also have a program called Just-in-Time Funding. They'll help pay for extracurricular activities. They have a store, but that's only in King County. It helps with clothing and school supplies, books, and other stuff that the kids may need. They have a Launch Success, which is a program with the alumni of their Graduation Success program. So it helps them to continue to receive support, which we'll talk about on the next slide about how these kids age out of the system and they need additional support as they head off to their life. They have a driver's assistance program. So they'll help students with their auto insurance, driver's education program, because you have to take that in the state to get your driver's license. So they'll assist with that. And then every year they have a wonderful holiday magic. When I was a foster parent, I had a couple of my kids get this one year, and they got bike helmets, and they were so excited. We had bought them bikes, but we didn't have the helmets, and so they were pretty excited about that. So that's a pretty great program. Next slide. So I just talked about a little bit when those kids age out of foster care at 18, they tend to, in a perfect world, the foster parents will keep them, but sometimes the reality is that they don't. And so these kids kind of find themselves homeless and without any support. So they can voluntarily agree with DCYF to stay into or to enter into this extended foster care program, and they can stay there till they're 21 right now. There's a bill in the legislature right now to extend that to 26, but right now it's at 21. So they can voluntarily sign up. If they don't want to do it at 18, they can do it anytime until they're 21. But it does provide some additional support for them. They'll still have a case manager at DCYF, and then they're able to help with transitional housing. They're in independent living. They could get a monthly stipend, medical and dental health services. So it's a really great program for them, especially if they find themselves without housing, without any parental guidance or support. Just really want to make sure that they don't end up homeless, out on the street, not able to continue their education. So this is a really good opportunity for them. I don't know that there's enough availability for housing and resources that we really would like to have for them, but this is a program that they can at least sign up for and get the help that they might need. Next slide. It's Vivian.
Thank you, Stacy. I just want to I just briefly want to mention this. We had a big presentation from the Washington Healthcare Authority last year during our Building Points of Contact on access to healthcare for our students. And I just want to remind you, particularly for unaccompanied youth and our families that are experiencing financial hardship, that their children are eligible more often than not for Apple Health. And particularly unaccompanied youth, we can help them get signed up for those services. There are some resources via Washington Health Plan Finder, and there is a kind of shorthand PowerPoint presentation that I shared in the reminder email. And again, we'll share those resources out to you. And you can also go on to our website and find, if you go to our Building Points of Contact training and download the PowerPoint presentation, their slide with the links are in there as well. Next slide, please. You know what, before I switch to this one, what I will tell you about healthcare also is reminding you about informed consent, and that is that unaccompanied youth are now able to make medical appointments for themselves. Prior to 2022 legislative session, they were able to have you or a nurse or a counselor make an appointment for them, and you still can do that. There is a form on our website that you can download to help you with that process. But they are also, if for some reason they're not connected to you or not connected to a school or not in school, able to make those appointments for themselves now too. And so now the Department of Licensing also has, we passed legislation in 2020 that provided youth with, particularly unaccompanied youth, with access to identification cards. And there's a process right there that you can see. I'll let you follow those links to click on if you need help helping a student get their ID. This is not their driver's license. This is a Washington State ID. You can follow that process. And I did recently send out in GovDelivery that there was an update to that process. There was a step that you needed to reach out beforehand, and now you don't have to do that. But we will be sending that information out again. And we will share those in the chat, Anne-Marie. Next slide, please. So now they're about done. You know, we're talking about our senior population of students. There may be our juniors who are wanting to plan ahead. We know now that we do really need to support students all the way through that process in order to get to what's happening after graduation, what's available to them on the other side of graduation and or their GED. There's a lot of resources that are out there that you can access through a variety of different sites and organizations. College Success Foundation The Washington Student Achievement Council, of which they both share in overseeing the Passport to Careers program, provides guidance and financial assistance to students in foster care or unaccompanied youth for their college experience. So definitely, if you have unaccompanied youth or youth in foster care who are going on to pursue college experience and or apprenticeship, you want to get them connected to that Passport program. There actually will be a conference coming up in person this year that Passport to Careers is providing. That'll be in May, the 23rd and 24th. Here in Western Washington. If you are interested and you want to learn more about that, I encourage you to go to those sites and get registered for that conference. Yes, Marilee, she's so inspirational too. Senator Yasmin Trudeau is speaking. She is a foster care alumni. And I find it to be an incredibly inspirational conference. If you're able to go, I highly encourage it. Also knowing, maybe the college experience is not for every student and what they would like to do is pursue employment. I highly encourage you to connect your students to WorkSource, who also that's a collaborative partnership between the Employment Securities Department and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA Council folks, as we refer to them in that field. And they have a lot of resources to help people, one, practice, like writing their resume, getting connected to resources, and also funding to support them in pursuing employment. Maybe they need a little bit of training and they have funding through WIOA that can help our youth get that training. Maybe before they graduate, they want to do an internship. You can get a paid internship through WIOA for youth where they might be working for a nonprofit organization, but they're actually paid by WIOA for about 6 months while they're working for that nonprofit. You can also get connected to apprenticeships for our students through the Apprenticeship in Non-Traditional Employment for Women. And then also just becoming an apprentice. Becoming an apprentice. You can get more information about that on the wa.gov site if you click there. And then, of course, there's most critical to them being successful if they're going to pursue educational opportunities is their application for the FAFSA and their federal student aid. Schoolhouse Connection has done a number of great trainings on some updates to the FAFSA that make it even a little bit easier for us to support students experiencing homelessness in that process. I highly encourage you to attend one of their webinars or go on and look at a recording of their webinar and read their summary page to find out more about those supports. But at the very least, if there's one thing that you can do to help students be successful with post-secondary opportunities, even if they don't decide to go on and go to college, is have them complete that FAFSA and see that they're going to be able to qualify for that financial assistance. Because a lot of times they just don't believe it's going to happen. I remember last year having a conversation with one of my grantees, and she talked about the April aha. A lot of times when students are in that senior year, they're not sure. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And then they get to April and all of a sudden they realize, hey, I'm going to graduate and I could have this opportunity to go. You can help them by completing that FAFSA in October with them and having them be prepared so that they can get the maximum amount of funding available to support them. Because many of them are going to qualify for quite a bit of financial aid, if not all of their Pell Grant, in supporting them. And then, of course, like I said, for foster care and unaccompanied youth, there's also additional funds that are there to support them to navigate their college experience, because we know college is expensive. But we also know that if they want to make a decent living wage, college is one of the best ways for them to be able to do that. Next slide. This is a little bit more in-depth information about the Passport to Careers program. I've already spoke quite a bit about it, so I'm not really going to dig into it, but just a reminder that if you're a former foster youth or you're an unaccompanied youth, that you will be eligible for those services, and you're enrolling at least half time in an eligible college. So Passport is not at every college, but it is at a number of colleges throughout the state. I want to say like 22 of them. And I don't know if I have a Passport expert on here right now that wants to jump in and give me that information, but I want to say that that's the number that I recall. And also recalling that it's available if they're maintaining Washington residency. This is a Washington state program. It is not in every state. So it is very specific to going to school here in Washington. Thank you for dropping that information up there, Melissa. Next slide. Thank you. So now we're getting towards the end of our time together, and I want to do a little activity with you. So on the right are a bunch of different websites. And I mean, I just layered a ton of stuff in there. And Melissa, do you want to drop all those? Can you drop those links in the chat? And then on the left, what you have are a plethora of different topics that we get questions about all the time, whether that is, where can I find out more about the FAFSA? I've already given you a hint, so hopefully you can figure that one out. How do I know more about who I can contact to help me with a student that's in foster care and getting connected to a caseworker? What are the requirements for liaisons? I did see that someone asked that question, like where could they see the mandates? Where can I get some professional development? I saw that question. I'll get to it in just a second. What I'd like you to do is pick a couple of those topics over there on the left-hand side, and then I want you to figure out where they are. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes. I'm going to just play a little background music while you do this and give you an opportunity to practice figuring out where you can find some of this information and draw a caregiver affidavit. You're not putting whoever they're maybe staying with, for example, as the person in the system.
Right, because they're not their guardians, so they have no say in, I mean, we don't know who they are. They could be Jojo Siwa.
Keith, are you on that you might be able to answer that question for her?
I am on. I can answer it if I think I understand it correctly. So I saw someone put in the chat that for the most part, they're having the liaison take the role of giving permissions, giving excuses for being out sick, excusing absences, also signing off on sports authorizations. That would really be the liaison, or I suppose you could use like a school counselor or someone in that capacity, as long as you were consistent and had it in your policies. That would be the preference. Having the student themselves sign off on anything, if they turn 18, that's 100% correct. All the rights transfer them to when they turn 18. Prior to 18, it'd be a preference to use the liaison over the student.
So we were following that way of doing it that you just mentioned, but then our liaison got told not to do that because it becomes a school district liability. That student, then if anything happens, it's all on the liaison who's under the school district, and they feel like that's a huge liability.
I mean, you'd want to check with your school board attorney to see their preference on it. There's a couple of things about that. I've had that conversation with Patricia with Schoolhouse Connection and with Melinda Dyer, and I have 6 years of experience. They have decades of experience, and no one has ever, according to Patricia, she knows of no one who has ever been held liable as a liaison signing off on a unaccompanied youth participating in a sport. And she gave a few reasons for that. One of primarily of which is it's the federal law that they be allowed to participate. And so being held liable is all about negligence, and it's not negligent to follow the federal law that requires them to be able to participate. Now, if it's known that the student has some kind of medical issue that would prevent them from being able to participate, that's totally different. Then you wouldn't want to sign off on it. But otherwise, participating in sports is an expectation of going to school. And so it would be required to allow them to participate. And if that requires the liaison to sign off on it, then they're following the federal law. And as long as there's not negligence involved in it, there's really not a liability issue.
Okay, thank you. I feel like I could get on the weeds on this. So who should I get in the weeds with on that? Partly because there's things like, well, only family one can, only the guardian can help the student apply even. Like they don't even have access to the application. So who do I need to kind of get in the weeds and do some?
What I would say is, I'm gonna put it in the chat again. The email address for the inbox. That way we can get into some specifics about what your needs are. You're probably not gonna ask a question that has not been asked, and some of it has to do with your local policies, but we can kind of guide you as to where to go.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Keith. So, how have y'all fared with figuring out or matching up resources? Has anybody found, I haven't seen any in the chat, so maybe I'm just missing it. Has anybody found resources that are available to provide supports for some of these pieces? It's so quiet. You're all brain dead at the end of the day, right?
I'll just unmute and say that I went to the licensing Department of Licensing because it was connected to identification cards. And something that I thought was interesting is that they said you could use a church address as your address if you were experiencing homelessness and under 25 years of age. Also, of course, they mentioned school, but I think that noting the dropout rate, I think it's a good correlation that they can use a different address and not necessarily the school address in order to gain their ID.
Yeah, there are other, they're very flexible. It's where they think that the person is going to be able to actually get the ID. So when you connect with them, and they're tremendously supportive in that guidance, there's a couple of contacts there, Vanessa Santos and Gilbert DeLeon, and they will help you in that process just to make, and so they'll make sure that it gets sent somewhere where that student is going to be able to get that ID. That's really what it's all about when they're looking for location, looking for an address. Looks like y'all did find some resources. So what can Family Promise do, Shannon?
I just referred someone yesterday. They can help families find safe housing and help set families up to find a job. They give them clothing, food. They're a wonderful organization.
Excellent. Thank you.
You bet.
Jason West, Cocoon House. So it looks like you said that they help some of your unaccompanied youth with getting an ID, nutrition benefits. What else does Cocoon House help with? I bet somebody else knows the answer to that question. What else can Cocoon House help with? Yes, emergency and transitional housing. Thank you. Kinship care. Yes, Heather, what did you find out?
Let me unmute. Well, I have done, what do you call it? Suitable other before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and nobody helped. with that. So I
Mhm.
found, and so I knew from that I could get TANF for the child.
Mhm.
So that was, but that was through my own research, not a social worker helping me who placed a child in my home. And then we have kinship adoption in our family, but we're really in Montana, they actually give you the money and require all of that done before you actually take the child. So I think it was a good place to go when parent or the family member is given the child, and nobody, I know our social workers are overwhelmed, but it was a place to help direct them that they can get some support. It's not a ton, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, they can be a great resource. And that funding that you spoke of here, we call that the child only grant or the non-needy relative grant. They're in the process of changing the name of it, but it has been called the non-needy relative grant. And on the site, they still call it the non-needy relative grant, but you may in some places hear child only grant. It's the same thing. It's funding that a caregiver might receive, but it's a caregiver who hasn't gone through custody and only maybe has that letter of temporary guardianship, so not court-appointed guardianship. They are eligible to apply for that to support the student that is staying with them. Another resource. Yes, the answers to the Padlet questions will be answered and available, but it's going to take a while for us to get to those. So please give us grace. A couple of things since we're at the end that I want to remind you, if you haven't saved the Padlet links, then please do before you click out of the Padlet in your browser. Make sure you save that link and the password so that it is available to you. I'm not planning on getting rid of these Padlets. They're there indefinitely for you to access, but I will also try to make the Q&A a separate spreadsheet that'll be available with answers for you from the Padlet too. So there's one on resources, one that you use just to have a test drive to get in here, and then of course the one that is the resource map. And thank you for dropping that again. And resources is the password for both the resource map and the Q&A. What I would love to see maybe is how helpful people have. You can go to the next slide, please, Savannah. How helpful people today have found this presentation. So if what you would do is maybe from 0 to 5, with 0 being I knew it all and you really did, I just came because I enjoyed your presence, to 5, I got so much out of this, or 3, like, yeah, there was some new stuff. Could you maybe just drop one of those values in the chat and let us know how we did today? Thank you so much. So on this last slide, this is just a reminder that there is a tremendous amount of information that is in the chat. Of course, for you, it's only available from the time that you joined. So if you went out and you came back in and you didn't save it earlier, you're only going to have it for that time that you've been here. But if you were to click on your chat box and open up so that you could have a conversation, at the bottom, you'll see like a little pencil with a T and a square with a plus and a file and a smiley face, and you'll see ellipses. And that ellipses, if you click on that, the first thing that's going to pop up is the availability for you to save the chat. So if you want to immediately keep all those links and have them available to you, if you click on that, you can save the chat and have those links available for you. I encourage you to do that. You can also, when you're in future meetings, just save the chat as you go along. When you do, make sure that you rename it so that you can easily find it on your computer. It can be kind of challenging to do that. I'm also going to reiterate that we are doing this when we publish it. It's going to be published in 4 different sections so that you will actually have a different recording and a different slide presentation for each part of our training today. so that you can just watch it in chunks and not feel like you have to take the whole thing. You can just take what you needed from today's presentation. I also say that we are working on, you won't be able to from the screen access the links. You will have to either access them in the chat, or I will be sending out a post presentation email. It probably will go out tomorrow morning, and it will have links in it and information that we talked about today and help you. So there'll be ways for you to get connected. Please give us grace with getting your clock hours. We're actually in a transition from our admin assistant, so moving things over, since Savannah is now our foster care program specialist. So it's going to take a while for us to get your attendance in, and once your attendance in, then you can go in and you have to complete the post survey in PD Enroller in order to be able to get those clock hours. Also, that will be the same process for putting our slides and our recordings up on the website. In order for us to do that, they have to be ADA compliant. So we have to, it takes us a while to do that editing process. It could take a couple of weeks. You're welcome to come to the next session if it's not full. And if you, I see that they've already been, I see that Savannah's already dropping some information, and Joey, and helping you get the chat there. But just please give us grace. It does take us a while, just like you. We have turnover and changes in our staff, and people are getting up to speed, but we will work as fast as we can to make sure that you get your clock out, your attendance in PD Enroller. Let's see, what else am I forgetting? I didn't cover everything today. Like I told you, you know, there are lots of other resources where you can get training and information. If you check out that Building Changes website, they have a number of deeper dive resources that are coming up. Of course, this is our contact information for all of our staff who are available to help you. So if you reach out to us, we'll do that. I do need to make a note. Earlier, we had the homeless ed as the contact for getting the Gov delivery. Don't do that. Please, actually, and I'll change that because it was in the email that I sent out, and I'll correct it. What we want you to do is email Melissa. Her email's down there at the bottom of the page. And Melissa, if you want to drop your email in the chat, then if you want to get the Gov delivery newsletters and you're not already getting them, please email Melissa and she can help you. Joey's dropped in. Come join us. They have lots of trainings coming up. They have a lot of great trainings through their deeper dive. We also have partnered with Schoolhouse Connection, and they are offering a range of different webinars that are available. Please, again, in the Gov delivery, you will find out a lot of this information. You can also go to our website and their website to find out more about upcoming training opportunities. If you need McKinney-Vento 101 basics, there is training resources on our site. You can click on that and you can see a recording of our McKinney-Vento 101 that happened earlier this school year, last September and October. And then, of course, you can also go to the National Center for Homeless Education for a range of webinars, briefs. You could walk through a PowerPoint. You could do one-on-one. You can see recordings. There is a tremendous amount of information out there about McKinney-Vento. And so the National Center for Homeless Education, Schoolhouse Connection, the NACY, the National Association for the Education of Homeless and Children and Youth, Building Changes are all great resources for you to seek valid information, and what I would have lots of confidence in sending you to any one of those to get information. And then, of course, Jill has dropped in there. If you are trying to figure out or you need support with your American Rescue Plan funding, you can connect with Jill Kavalok and she will help you navigate that. She's that grant manager. If you have McKinney-Vento subgrant funding questions, Melinda is the person to talk with. If you are inquiring about homeless student stability education program, that would be me. If you are inquiring about community-based homeless student stability program, which is grants to community-based housing partners, that would be the Office of Homeless Youth in the Department of Commerce. There's a lot of great tools out there for you. As always, we're really glad that you were able to join us today and hope that you found this helpful and informative. And we look forward to one of these days getting to connect with you in person. Thank you all for joining us.